language. Let me just press the record button. Could I do that? um, but yeah, this is why we look at this in sociology. This is what a lot of our work does in sociology. If there are massive systemic failures, then it's a lot of times sociologists who are looking at how do we change that. I've been talking about that all semester long. And I guess now that I wish that a week had passed and we could just jump right back into class and nothing tragically relevant to this class and our topics was taking place every single day, but it is. So please be mindful of the conditions that we create. And I would even say the systemic failure where we've already said we can't change anything about guns. Not you, not me, but if this thing is happening again and again and again, it did, right? FedEx, I could even go outside of just the couple racially motivated, the police hunting down and killing people of color, and get to a few more mass shootings all within the last week. But I would say if we're worried about, and I am, and you are, and you should be, systemic failures, then we should be even more worried about having lost the will to change the things that we know are wrong in a country that has been so defined by our ability to do so and create more equality and create better conditions. And this, the race thing is not that. I don't feel that same thing. When it comes to guns, it's like all or nothing. I need an AR-15 to protect my house and to hunt a turkey or nothing. And that is quite clearly not the case. Bo also brings a good point where I was talking about pronouns as we shift into this chapter on gender. And what if we replace the words, right? Would we be asking the same questions? Do we say those same things? And if we do we know immediately that they're wrong once he put the word she in front of them? Absolutely. So just like we look at racial bias or any other type of inequality all semester long, just as a point of focus, that's what we do as sociologists, look at it from many different perspectives. We're also going to do the same with gender. And I would say students, if there's any chapter in this book that students are increasing, it is changed more than any other chapter in this book, both how my students interact in a live classroom setting, streaming classroom setting, talk, interact, email, and are concerned about, it would be, I think, this chapter on gender, which seems to have had some pretty intensely profound shifts over just the last handful of years. So, all right, as we segue into gender, let me rewind. Me talking now isn't lagging, is it? No, okay, good. I don't know out here in the country if I'm able to like do the Zoom thing and not have the other thing be laggy, but since you could quite possibly be surrounded with devices, I think that just telling everybody at the same time and giving you a URL to watch, if that doesn't work, seems to be a kind of an end around. So yay for us. Okay. So before break, test, I believe that the results of those were given back. I believe we added a couple points. You should be good. Now, if I look here, and I won't screen share this with you because it makes me sad. But that is our food drive, which I think, I don't know, let's look, the 100, no, that's the FRCC 100. I don't know, we have like, it's not a lot. This is like $100. Last semester, we raised $9,000. So between my classes, people really haven't realized the urgency of this yet. Even if your grade is fantastic, or especially if your grade is fantastic, reach out to family members, donate to this link, help feed people. We know that you're not going to be able to be a success in this life if you don't even have a base number of calories every day or know where your next meal is coming from, apart from some of these big pieces that we're talking about all semester long. So follow the link to the food drive, donate what you can, talk about it in the discussions. And if you're like, I'm sitting, Jason, at 100%, even better for you to donate, right? Even better. If you got 100% in this class and it's not even like a thing, because like I said, and I don't even know if I said this or not, but my mom always used to be like, you can't have people pay for extra credit. And I was like, I'm having people feed people. She's like, people should just want to feed people. I'm sorry, that was just my mom's tone in that conversation. Mostly she was very nice. Then I said, yeah, baby, people should want to feed people. Yeah, they should How come so many people are food insecure? Because not everybody does. So the reality is, let's jump on top of that if you haven't already, and give it some love and donate what you can. All right. So the Food Matters Project. Look, I normally have the Food Matters Project do a week previous. So I got a lot of emails, and I'm sure that there were people that were like, screw Jason, I'm on spring break. But that's only if you waited 3 months to start the project. So in all reality, I was just trying to give folks an extra week, an extra few days to complete it. I know how that works because I was the student doing it the night before. So if you feel like the project interrupted your spring break, I'm not sorry, because I wasn't purposely interrupting your spring break. That being said, if you had a few extra days to get it done and you did, fantastic. If you didn't start it until that Monday, and then I think I, sent something out that said you could still, turn it in for up to 3 days late, because at that point you're losing 5 points a day, and what's the point, right? So I think that we got most of those projects in. If something has happened and you haven't turned that project in, I mean, you should turn in something, even if it's like late, because that's a big deal. And we've been talking about it. I've been asking Top Hat questions about it. I pretty much since day one. Why, Jason? Well, I've been assigning this for 10 years and have continuously modified it. Is it because I need to know more about this project? No, it's not about that. Because I saw how people were scoring and I wanted those numbers to go up. So over the last 4 or 5 years, consistently, I've started earlier and earlier, asking Top Hat questions, having a whole class period just to discuss it. The reason is because I want to help. So I hope that did help you. And, if it didn't, there's extra credit. If it didn't, let's feed some people if you need some extra points. Other than that, the big project is out of the way. 3 exams are out of the way. One of my vaccinations is out of the way. Fixed the garden fence. I got an auger. Did I tell everybody I got an electric auger because I got an electric chainsaw? I dug on one battery 15 holes. I planted 9 14-foot trees. I even dug 2 chicken graves this morning for old chickens that I just didn't. I was like, they're in a bucket. I'm a busy guy. So now with the auger, instant chicken grave digger. I know. Anyway, so I was busy, really busy. That being said, it was an awesome break, and then I got to get out lots, but I didn't get a break because of course I teach 2 classes for CU, 3 classes for Front Range. I don't know, whatever, right? Did I tell everybody I went skiing, took the boys skiing for the first time ever? Yeah. So anyway, now we're all caught up. What's the test makeup date? I'm not sure. I do believe that I have that in announcements. It's one of the first 3 to 5 announcements that were made. 3 to 5. It could be number 2. Then I would be underestimating myself. But I think it's like one of the first handful of announcements. You'll see that those exams will be open for 24 hours, May 5th. Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, you can take one that you've missed. So again, I'm just trying to help because I know life is intense. I mean, if life is intense for me, it's probably way more intense for you, right? Because I'm just hanging out on a farm, teaching 8 college classes, raising 2 teenagers. Whatever. Okay. Any questions? I'm just going to take a sip of coffee. This is the 3rd round of coffee. I'm on 30 miles on the bike, 10 hills, 8 classes, and 3 rounds of coffee. Let's do this. I feel like ripping Hulk Hogan. Ah! Oh, that wasn't really ripping it off, was it? That wasn't very dramatic, but yeah, let's go coffee. Woo! All right. Any questions? Not seeing any. No? Should we roll? Should we get into this chapter on gender? All right. So let's just say that a lot of this chapter on gender would confuse my father, who's 80. And so let's just say, as we talk about gender, just like so many things, there's a lot of disconnect, isn't there? I mean, like really a lot of generational disconnect. I was listening to somebody complain. Oh, sorry, let me turn this down. I was listening to somebody complain. I guess I listen to people complain all the time about transgendered bathrooms. Oh, lordy. And so then I waited for that person to do their thing about, and then I was like, have you ever used a porta potty? That was it. End of discussion. Hiya! Ka-chow! That's not a violent body slam. That's a gentle learning moment, right? Have you ever used a porta potty? All of those, every single one of those you've ever used, right? So a lot of ways that I guess I try and wrap my head around ideas of race, I do around gender. And I guess the reason I'm kind of leading off with that is because, of course, we're trying to cultivate understanding and perspective. So people that are 80, I mean, there was no, guess what? People who are 80, nobody in that generation died from a gender reveal party. Let me just say that first off, okay? Because that wasn't a thing. People who are, let's crank it back 32 years. I'm 47, 33 years, 32 years. I guess technically I'm 32 years younger than my dad. He was older when he had me. And then you look at people who are in their 40s, that perspective is way different. Then that perspective is different from people in their 30s. And luckily, I have the life blessing of working with college students. So my flow of information is pretty steady, and I have two teenagers, and that backs me up even further in as far as this gender piece or the race piece, or how do I release a successful video on TikTok of me dancing? Haven't done it yet, still trying. All right, so let me get to some of these questions, because really what I want to talk about today is the same thing we lead off with every time, which is, do you see changes in how students' perspectives have changed over the years? And let me back it up to a few minutes ago. I've seen more changes in the gender perspective and in students' perspectives around gender than anything else in the last 15 years teaching. And I think, oh, wow, that is such a huge question, because this starts 15 years ago when I worked at Front Range. And I think 15 years ago, it was a group of transgendered individuals that would come speak to the class, not just trans individuals or transgender individuals at Front Range. That Mary Berg, who is Mary Hill, got me my first teaching job. And these individuals would come and really, really just talk for a whole class period. And what my students knew, what I knew, the breadth of that experience was, I think, like so much more unknown than fast forward 15 years. Some of these individuals I wish I could still have. I don't know how to get a hold of a few of the folks that were talking to our class, but really amazing and educational for students for my classes around this issue. So I would say, yeah, massive changes. What are those changes? I think we'll get to them. But if I had one word that just popped into my head over the last 15 years, that would be fluidity. If we're talking about gender, I would say that the biggest change has come in the fluidity surrounding gender. Do you think our generation is more open to gender differences than your generation or our parents' generations? Well, certainly my parents' generations. Probably my generation too. When you are trained as a sociologist, you win for life. Like you once you're trained as a sociologist, you don't go into things about race or gender, or like you don't stop thinking about those things. You've learned those things, so you just keep absorbing that. So I don't feel like I've been shocked or thrown off or unaccepting about anything in the last 20 some years, because that's just the protocol for how I think that the people I've surrounded myself come to see the world. Do I think there are people my age, 47, that just don't get it? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say this, anybody who has not had that experience doesn't get it, right? So like, I can only lecture so much about the trans community. I can only lecture so much about race, because I can only understand so much about these things. That being said, I think generational differences are huge. Now, I don't know what that's going to turn into, when maybe that's the whole goal of everything we talk about all semester long. Maybe in 50 years, gender is fluid, race is fluid, equality is, because of people's attitudes, is closer anyway. And then these things are important to people. But instead of defining these things in always like stressful or negative ways, we embrace the awesomeness around that. I mean, there you go. That's my hope. But still some pretty big generational differences. And I say things around the house that my boys look at me, and now a lot of times it's purposeful, and I'm just trying to like catch them about things because that's a training and a teaching moment. But sometimes I'll say something and the boys are like, Dad, Dad, Dad. And I'll be like, what? And they'll be like, come in here. All right, let's look at this. And there's some interesting answers already. Now, normally, and I think I mentioned at the beginning of class for the semester, when I say describe the female gender in one word or male gender in one word, normally the lists in a live class that are like 100 long, it's intense and it's fiery, and sure, it's filled with stereotypes and it's filled with truth. That's what I was going to say. Is one of the things that I saw today is there was an answer, I think, across the board that said this is stereotyping, which of course it can be, but it's certainly not designed as that. And I think of a lot of the information that we get from this question, certainly not inherently stereotypical. Some of this very real, very good reflections and interesting stuff. Some of it, what we hear all the time in stereotypical. So we'll look at these lists. And I wasn't asking, how long have I been using Top Hat for? I don't know, 8 or 9 years. At first, I wasn't asking this. I was asking things, I think, just female, male, and wasn't trying to ignore transgender communities, but I was just by not asking that, really. And then there's some other reasons that early on I wasn't asking that, and that is because of a lot of the misinterpretation and negativity surrounding differing genders that so many people just don't understand. So I think these lists are good. I think there's some value to them, and of course there'll be some stereotyping in it, but I've already read a couple of them over, and I was like, wow, these are pretty good. So let's or interesting anyway, and I think learning, right? I think there's room for learning. So before, what's the biggest change that needs to happen is gender inequality. If you haven't logged in yet, log on really quick to Top Hat, answer a couple questions while we're sitting here, but let me just start and describe the male gender. Let's start right out of the gate. So let me say that in the past, and is my volume good? If I'm ever too loud or too quiet, just let me know. Somebody give me a signal or type something in. This list about describe the male gender has not historically been a positive one. I think there are a lot of positive things about people who identify with the gender male. I'm one of those, people in that list. That being said, let's breathe and be mindful, right? And realize that this may not be fully embracing your maleness because there's all sorts of learning to be done. Okay, let me read this list. Describe male gender in one word. Privileged, 5. All right, so top 5 privileged. Dominant, 3. Strong, 3. Confusing, 2. Masculine. Toxic at 2. Scary. Idiots. If you ever read through these in order, toxic, scary, idiots, it's kind of writing itself into sentence form. Tough, but in quotation marks. Aggressive, gross, dependable. All right, there we go. Dependable, strong. A few things here. Neutral, egotistical, power holding, complicated, oblivious. This is stereotyping. Manipulative, tall, corrupt, unemotional, controlling, emotionless, self-centered, entitled, hairy. All right, there we go. Sorry. Superior, in quotes, apparently. Powerful, no idea, but there's a level of privilege. Man. Testosterone, violent, tough, dominant, favored, and maybe here at the end, above. Okay, all right. Make some sociological observations about this list.
I would say it's mostly like a negative thing.
What's that?
So yeah, I would say it's mostly a negative thing. Yeah.
The list seems primarily negative. All right, other sociological observations. We do this, and I know we're just getting back into the discussion thing. I can wait. I got all day. I get paid the same.
They're constantly seen as like the superior in quotation marks. They're like gender, like if they're seen as the more privileged group.
Okay, seen as the more privileged group, right? And perhaps superior by privilege, not superior by, I don't know, earning that, whatever, superiorness. Is that a word? Anyway, all right. Other observations about this list.
I feel like it's mostly based off of experiences.
All right. Based off of experiences. Yeah, and this is why, although there's some stereotyping here, I think there's a lot of value, tons and tons of value past that. Many of these reflect an individual's experiences. Absolutely good. Other sociological observations about this list. I'm trying not to bite my nails, and I have been doing this since COVID started. If there's anybody out there that's a chronic nail biter like me that can't the last year, I understand your pain. Okay, sorry, just had to get past that. I'm doing it. Sorry. Observations. Although I appreciate the nail painting advice, which I have done plenty of times. What else? Observations of that list? Just that it's negative, seemingly superior. That's it. And based off our experiences, nothing else. Oblivious, manipulative, brash. Oh, did I say brash? Penis. There we go. Sorry. Sorry. Penis. There we go. Not trying to be rude, but that always makes our list. It always makes the list. So either I just accidentally missed it or somebody typed it later. Anyway, thoughts?
I would like to balance off of Connor's idea of that it's like based on experiences, just because like I deal with dudes on a daily basis and it seemed pretty spot on for the most part. Obviously there were some things that are like generalized, but from my experience, it seems like we as females or people who identify as the gender female, from what I heard, it's like how we view men.
Sure. Okay, good. Thank you. Any other thoughts about this list?
Probably
sorry.
like traits for masculinity.
Yeah, right. Some traits for masculinity. Let me show you my new conversation starter. I didn't know this when Julie gave me this. I didn't know this was going to be a massive gender conversation starter over the last 2 weeks. Yeah. You put on a mask, that could be a conversation starter. You put on a pink mask with a beard, I guess in the year 2021, I'll get around to that later, but whew. I ordered a 6-pack. Okay, that's how I am. I'm so confrontational that I realized within 24 hours of wearing this mask that I was going to get into gender discussions. So I went to Amazon and bought a 6-pack because I love having those discussions with people. Oh, sorry. Shelby's like, oh my gosh, it's true. Yeah, let's talk about masculinity right here in the hardware store. That's a good place for it, shall we? Okay. Not male, but from a female's perspective, it seems like many of these have started since we were young. Superheroes were always shown as men being strong and tough, characters like James Bond being aggressive and physical. Absolutely. Sexually aggressive. I mean, have you seen some of the early Bonds? Like the 1960s Sean Connery ones where he's just slapping people into sex? Oh my goodness. Yes. And also check this out. What has changed is when I was a kid for Halloween costumes, all the superhero costumes were just like costumes. But when the boys were little, they started adding the padded muscles. Like in 20 years, it went from just like, you are the superhero to like throwing all the extra, like, right? Now I understand you want to dress up like the Hulk. You got to have some muscle. I get it. But still, right? Okay. So anything else about this list?
I would
Yeah.
like to say, oh, sorry, go ahead, Bella.
That's okay. Both of you.
Nope. Okay, I'll go. I would just like to say I think it would be interesting to see what answers guys put for this as opposed to what answers girls put, and vice versa for when we talk about one word to describe women.
I've thought about this so much about splitting these questions up. Answer this question if you identify as male, right? And then answer this like question if you identify as transgender. There's just so many questions, but sorry. Oh, I'm pointing. Excuse me. Virtual pointing. I hate it when I do that in class. But that's a huge piece to this, right? I mean, there's potentially men who are answering toxic, right? We have to understand that. Just like we know, and I've alluded before when I was like, I was a stay-at-home dad. I was on the playground all the time. It was me and like 10 moms. And I always heard, every time I was there and somebody fell down and scraped a knee, it was a mom, because really I'm usually the only dad, that would say, get up, don't cry, be a man, right? So just like males can identify toxicity in males, females can be the ones that start that, or that have a big role in that, or play a big role in that. Sucks, but true, right? Okay, good. That's how a sociologist thinks. Okay, Bella.
I was just gonna say, like, commenting on what Connor said, I think it's kind of an odd observation because, of course, these answers are going to be based on our experiences. That is the only thing we have to base them off of. Because even if it's not our personal experiences with men, it's our experience with media, it's our experience with marketing, like what Jason was saying about Halloween costumes. I'm sure, like, we have noticed the added muscles and stuff, but I'm sure we've also noticed the sexualization of young girls when it comes to Halloween costumes, and how, like, all of them are more focused on fashion than the actual costume. Like, it's just based on our personal experiences with the world, and that's what, like, sociology is. So I think, of course, they're going to be based on our experiences with men. And, like, what we were saying about, like, our views on our own gender, like, when I answered the female question, I said that we were very divisive because, like, in my opinion, some of the people who are working hardest against feminist ideals are TERFs. They're trans exclusionary radical feminists. Like, they are doing a lot of harm to women. And, like, just because I am a woman doesn't mean I can't see the downfalls in my own community.
Very well said, and I'm writing that down. Actually, I'm writing that term down right now because I'm going to go check that out. I have not heard that used. Excellent. Okay, anything else? This list, and we could really spend a whole class period talking about gender and Halloween, couldn't we? I mean, if there's not a more what can I say about how, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Like, there's playful stuff with it, there's just warped stuff with it, there's like a reversal on one day of stuff that you'd like to do but that you won't every other. I mean, there's so much with gender and Halloween. Okay, I'm gonna head over to the list. Describe the female gender in one word. 7, strong. 3, feminine. 3, powerful. 2, underestimated. 2, resilient. 2, fighting. 1, vagina. 1, awesome. Driven. Underappreciated. Patient. Ambitious. Lesser. Emotional. Neutral. Shorter. I'm just hoping that comes from the same person that put tall. Like I'm such an emotional thinker, but then when I run into people like my son, like Storm, that are very logical, I love that, because I'm not that person. I'm not the sort of more logical. Reliable. This is stereotyping. Accommodating, outgoing, non-dominant, controlled, underrepresented, feared, mothers, below, motivated, overlooked a lot, suppressed, sensitive, fighters, disrespected, toxic, multidimensional, unequal, undervalued, empowered. I would like to say that this list disappoints me every single time because nobody's ever liked dad, and we really did only get one mom thing. But we'll talk about that because that's a passion of mine as far as like gender roles and parenting and things like that. Okay, let's absorb that. Absorbing, supercomputer, computer brain processing. Now, thoughts.
I'd like to add one to that list. I already put mine, but like, I'd like to add manipulative. I saw that on the male list and I thought it applied more to women, to be honest, because we have that history of needing to make men think that our ideas are their ideas in order to get what we want. And so that's kind of just ingrained in the female brain modernly, I feel like.
Good addition. All right. I'm just processing that because it's because all right, what else? Other observations about this list?
I noticed, I think it was just emotional or something along the lines of just calling us emotional. And to me, that immediately brought up a lot of emotions, I guess the best way to put that, but that's not in this, they're not the same. But so what I was thinking is I growing up was told that like whenever I felt even the smallest thing, I was just being over emotional because I was a woman. I was female, so even the smallest little bit of emotion was too much. And then I also thought back on like how guys are sometimes like, oh my gosh, a girl is so much when she's on her period. That's not because of estrogen, that's because of testosterone, which is the thing that is in guys. And so like for me, it's just like the emotional thing is weird because we're always like profiled as emotional, but then we're also told we're not allowed to feel our emotions when we're younger. So I just to me that just seems like a weird like not parallel contradiction. There we go. That's the word.
I feel like this is a good moment to tell you all that I just hope you're surviving this life and I love you. as we start to like unravel how messed up everything is. I mean, I just feel like that sometimes. Oh, it's chapter on stratification. Oh, it's the chapter. How does anybody even make it this far is a question that I get sometimes in my head. So anyway, I hope you are all well considering this world, right? Women are a paradox, I feel. I don't remember seeing that one, but someone said agreed. Other thoughts about this list?
I guess I thought it was kind of interesting that there wasn't more like descriptive words about appearance, just because people focus so much on a woman's appearance. But I also do think that this was more inviting words describing personality, like because of like the way we were answering this question and the way it was proposed. It was more like, give me a word that describes how women work, think, act. And whereas when we like looked up women's Halloween costumes, it was like very sexual because it was a visual thing. So
Right.
like it kind of makes sense, but I was still surprised.
Yeah, good. How are men viewed as the less emotional gender when they're the ones emotional enough to commit and general violence? Yes, we are emotional beings. And it's too bad that folks have weaponized that against people so that they can't feel a full range of human emotion or feel like they could. The appearance left out due to the fact this class high concentration female, therefore answer more positive. Perhaps, and perhaps again, what's the gender makeup? And I wouldn't know just by reading names, but what's if we had people self-identify? What's the gender makeup of the people responding to the top hat questions? You know, like, right? Like we could just look at this across the board. And I think that yields answers and interesting data. Yeah, who's participating and how does that reflect? Good. Anything else about these lists? Okay, move to the next one. All right. Describe transgender in one word. And 53 responses. Brave, 6. Misunderstood, 3. Valid, 3. Oppressed, 2. Underrepresented, 2. Changed, 2. Strong, 2. Difficult, 2. Varied, wonderful, finally themselves, neutral, expressive, distressed in the sense that they suffer from distress as a result of their gender dysphoria, marginalized, unknown, this is stereotyping, confident, judged, changing, switching, true, hormones, identity, honest with oneself, unique, overlooked, fighting, a person, understanding one's true self outside of your physical attributes or born sex, equal, discriminated, powerful, different, minority, proud, identity, individual, experience. Something comes to mind right away, but I don't want to jump in line since I'm talking all the time. Thoughts about this list?
I thought it was like, well, personally, because I grew up with a transgender friend, to me, it's weird to like separate them, you know? Because to me, um, okay, they're okay. Yeah, just I asked a question in the chat and it got answered. But so for me, it's like I never viewed them as like their own separate thing, just because I view gender identity as like a more of a social construct. I don't really think about the physical, and so having this be a separate question to me was a little weird when they honestly themselves would identify as one of the two like normally. And then I also noticed that in all the answers, there was a lot of people just being like, it's completely like valid and normal and it's honest. And so that's just something I noticed, I guess.
Good. Other thoughts?
I noticed it was mostly positive, which was surprising to me, because my sister has a transgender friend and his parents aren't very accepting. But it's interesting to me because that seems to be the normal, from people of that generation. And so to hear our generation think so positively of them was kind of like a culture shock to me. I've never really heard that before.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so my first thought was this list outside this classroom from just random people in the community would be way different, right? I mean, when I ask my Soc 220 environmental sociology students about things, 90% of them are like passionate about the environment somehow. So I'm asking a question in a microcosm of people who have an elevated level of knowledge outside, maybe general outside of a college campus, just, you know, sort of the town or whatever. So yeah, I think that this list, and by saying that, I think that this list would be much more unknown or negative perhaps if it wasn't within the sort of our class confines, which is, in my opinion, you know, everybody's views are supported here if we're being respectful towards each other and compassionate. And that's kind of our guiding thing, is looking at things from different perspectives, but obviously being able to do that, knowing that those are the guidelines, and being 3 months into that are a lot different than anybody else who might just be given this question randomly. Other thoughts? I think it's great that if we're including non-binary genders and non-conforming gender, one of the words is valid because they're typically described as confused. Yes. Yep. And of course, I mean, it's when you call somebody an alien, you're saying that they're not human. You know, when you invalidate people based on gender, same thing. I mean, you're really like, what's a non-valid person? That I don't even know. Can't even wrap my head around that, right? But you know, important to when the message maybe coming from society oftentimes is quite different. Okay, good. Anybody else? Any of these lists? Any of the lists in comparison to one another? We just have a couple more minutes. This is really what I wanted to do today, is jump back into getting our minds thinking sociologically and about these things. Thoughts? Any other thoughts about this?
I think it'd be interesting to hear what like trans people would have said to this question, because like we talked about that for the male and female gender question, and I feel like trans people are just more sure of how they identify as themselves. And so how they would feel of even just having their own question instead of just being included in the male or female section.
Absolutely. I had several transgender students approach me for not having a separate question over the years. And so I'm really trying to guide this, and is sort of, that's why I have that sort of umbrella piece, you know, that's a bit more inclusive, because that's always, you know, that's just always my goal. However, yes to what you said as well. Good. Anything else? All right. Looks like there's discussion this week. Is there discussion this week? Is that right? Is that what I saw? Maybe starting on the 22nd. Are we supposed to get snow? I'm asking a rhetorical question. We're supposed to get snow, right? I'm a farmer. I know this. I'm glad it didn't break a bunch of trees last week and kind of like dwindle down to nothing. It's raining, which is much needed. Not a big fan of the emergency protocol of saving 4 acres worth of trees, but I don't think we'll have to worry about that. So is there anything else? Heads up as far as what's going on online. Yeah, we're jumping into this chapter. I don't know. I can't think of anything else. So since it's 150, be good people, do good things, mask up, stay safe. I hope that, you know, if it's available to you, and I think it is now in Colorado, is Moby Arena going to be used as a vaccination site? Is that right? Or is currently? I thought I had read that, but no, the projects haven't been graded. The grad assistants need their lives too. And so last week was people get their lives to a certain degree. I'm sure they're working on papers. I'm sure you're working on stuff. Rest assured though, that you probably had more fun than I did. No, I shouldn't be your measuring stick. I have lots of fun. Maybe I should be your measuring stick. Anyway, all right. Do all those things. If you have any other questions, please reach out. I'll post this video. Take care, everybody. Peace. Reach out if you need anything.